Hi, these are the quiz corrections for quiz number 17 in chapter 13 and 14.1, which was the quadratic formula. This was on May 12th, 2016. This quiz was out of 38 points. Question number one says simplify. When you say the word simplify, you're looking at these polynomials, and you should identify that here you are, a little hard to see, that's a math operation of addition. So basically you're looking at it and you're looking for addition, which means that you don't need the parentheses here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify those that are like terms. So I have triple underline here for u squared. So essentially there's no other like terms with that. 6 u to the third, there's no other one that has u third. I'm sorry, there is something that has u to the third. That would be 6 and a 4, so that would give you 10 u to the third. Then there's no other terms that have a unit, so that would be negative 2u. And then the constants 2 and 8 gives you a 10. So that means the answer would look something like this. Now I selected both A and D. D is in descending order, which is better. But you'll notice that all of the terms are also here in A, so if you chose either A or D would be correct. Question number 2, it says the same thing, tells you to simplify. And here you have the math operation that's a negative here, or subtracting, which means you need to take this and change all of these math operations here and do the opposite. Or you can also think of it as distributing a negative 1. So that becomes a positive 7x to the fourth. That becomes a positive 5, and that one becomes a positive 9x. And then you just combine like terms. Negative 5 and a positive 7, you're just adding the coefficients, that's the numbers in front, so that would be a 2, be x to the fourth. Remember the exponent, the base, when you have the same base and the same exponent, that tells you they're like terms. I have a 9x and a negative 7x, so that becomes a positive 2x. And then the constants, 5 and 5 gives you 10, so the answer is D. For question number 3, they're asking you to simplify here. You have a binomial, r minus 7 times r plus 2. Remember, there's no math operation here. There's no plus or minus sign. So you're going to multiply that binomials. You can use FOIL, or in our class we use the box. You're going to multiply first, and then you're going to add and combine like terms inside the box. So I have r minus 7, r plus 2, order doesn't matter, and here you're going to multiply. R times r is r squared, r times negative 7 is negative 7r, r times a positive 2 is 2r, and 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. So there I multiplied, and now I'm going to add or combine like terms. So the only things that are like terms in here are these two, positive 2 and a negative 7, because they both have an r there, so that becomes negative 5, r squared minus 5r minus 14, and that would be choice A. The most common mistake is not distributing to the next term, so a common mistake would have been r times r, which gives you r squared, and then negative 7 times a positive 2, which D I think would be a common mistake. If you didn't see your coefficients, maybe you thought they were both positive, that would be positive 9r, that would be incorrect. A way you can check your answer if you realize what's happening in the Xbox method here is that you can actually do reverse. You can actually take this trinomial and use Xbox to go back to these binomials. Question number 4 says same thing, simplify, so you have something to the power of 2. The common mistake is you think you can distribute this power of 2 to each of those terms. That would be incorrect, because in exponents they call it the power rule. The power rule means if these were just a base and an exponent. In this case, you have a sum of terms. So b plus 7, this binomial squared, which means you have 2 of them, b plus 7 times b plus 7. And essentially, you're going to do the same thing with the box method. B times b will be b squared. B times positive 7 is 7b. B times 7 is 7b. And 7 times 7 is 49. And here you can combine like terms, which is these two right here. And that'll give you b squared plus 14b plus 49. That would be choice C. Again, you'll notice that multiplying and factoring are essentially opposite, so you could have taken what you think the answer is and then use your Xbox method. It would actually look something just like this. All right, question number 5 looked a little tricky. Some students thought they should add parentheses here to the left of the 2x and between the 7 and 8. But if you notice, because there is no parentheses, you're going to use PEMDAS, order of operations. You're going to do parentheses, which means you can't do anything there. There's no exponents. Then you're going to do multiplication. The multiplication is right here. So there you're going to distribute this 8 to the 7x into the positive 7, which gives you 56x and positive 56. And that 2x there is just hanging out until you do addition and subtraction, and there you can just combine like terms, and your answer is B, 58x plus 56. Question number 6 tells you to factor completely. So the very first thing you should be looking at when you're factoring is looking for your greatest common factor. In this problem, all you have to do is just your greatest common factor. The factors of 7 and x, 7x is 7 times x. The factors of negative 7 are negative 1 and 7. They both have a 7 in common, so you circle that, and that's what goes on the outside. You can refer back to that flow chart that we created, how to factor completely, either quadratics or cubic functions. Question number 7 says factor completely. So the very first thing you're going to look for is the greatest common factor. X cubed is x times x times x. Remember, anytime you have a minus sign, just automatically make it a negative 1, and then x squared is x times x. Negative 72x is negative 1 times 72 times x. They all have an x in common, and when you do that, it turns into a quadratics. So up here, notice how it is the power 3. You're looking at the problem and recognizing that you cannot find, there's not 2 terms into the power 3, so that means you can't use sum or difference of cubes. Now here, what you can do is you can factor this trinomial just using your x box. This is your a value, which is 1, b value is negative 1, and c is negative 72. On top of the x will always go a times c, which is negative 72. And your b value, which is negative 1. I need 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 72. And those same 2 numbers need to add to be negative 1. So positive 8 and negative 9 are our answers. And don't forget the x there is your GCF. Question number 8. Same thing, factor completely. You have 64x squared minus 25. If you notice, you have your a value. A value is always in front of the x squared. Here is a constant, meaning there's no x. That is your c value. And your b value, if you don't have one, you can add a 0x there. You're going to get some very large numbers. These 2 numbers multiply together would be 1600. And your b value is 0. So anytime your b value is 0, your hint is that these 2 numbers have to be opposites of each other. They're the same exact number, one's positive, one's negative. So you can list out the factors. I think I made a mistake. I recognize that you don't need those. And so the 2 numbers I came with were 40 and negative 40. Those 2 numbers go inside your box here in the bottom left and the top right. Your first term always goes to the top left, and your c value goes to the bottom right. Now notice how I'm using the box method now. And you notice in 7 I didn't have to do that because here a is equal to 1. So when a is equal to 1, you just have to use your x. If a is greater than 1, which is here, then you're going to have to use your x in your box. You just find out what they have their greatest common factor. That's an 8x. Here it's a 5. There it's an 8x, and here's a negative 5. And remember, when you multiply 8x times 8x gives you 64x squared. 8x times 5 gives you 40x. 8x times negative 5 is negative 40x, and negative 5 times positive 5 is negative 25. The front side was worth 16 points, 2 points for every multiple choice question. Number 9, you have multiple choice, same thing. Now this one says now to solve. The difference between solving and factoring is in factoring you should just get your binomials, or you need to find your greatest common factor, but solving you just take it one step further. So here I'm going to factor this. A times c is 6. 2 numbers are 1 times 6 because they add together to be 7. So 1 and 6 go in my binomials right there and right there. And then the next thing is your hint is equal to 0, which means you set both of these equal to 0. X plus 6 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. And what you'll realize when you solve that, you'll get x equals negative 6 and negative 1. So those are your solutions. Now remember, a solution or solving means if x is equal to negative 6 or x equals negative 1, you can put it into this function here and it will equal 0. Question number 10, just like question number 8, is called a difference of squares. So I'm going to show you a different variation of solving this problem. So you could have done it for number 8, or you could use the same method down here for 10. So here's a different way of solving 10. This is, you shouldn't, don't need that little mark right there. So 9k squared minus 64 equals 0. So if you recognize that both these values can be taken square root, put it into those parentheses, into to the power of 2. Well, whatever here equals 9k squared, that would be 3k. 3k squared is 9k squared. 8 squared is 64. So essentially this is your a value, this is your b value, and the formula for that is a plus b times quantity a minus b. And you just put in your a value there, and you put in your b value here, and that gives you 3k minus 8 and 3k plus 8. Then essentially you're going to do the zero product rule, meaning setting both of those equal to 0. And when you solve, you'll get one positive 8/3, one negative 8/3. Question number 11 I made was extra credit. The reason why it was extra credit because you're solving something to the power of 3 which didn't do sum or difference of cubes. So essentially you're going to set it equal to 0, so move everything to one side. You have x to the third plus 3x squared minus 10x. You recognize that your GCF is x. If you factor this, you'll get this as your binomials, and you can still apply the zero product rule to polynomials greater than 3. So it means you set each of these equal to 0, and C would be your correct answer. Question number 12, factor completely. You recognize that it's to the power of 3, and you only have 2 terms, so that should give you a hint that it's a sum and difference of cubes. First thing you're going to do is put them inside the parentheses here, and then you're going to do it to the power of 3, and what can I put in there? So when I do it to the power of 3, it gives me 125y to the third. That would be 5y. And 1 to the third would be 1. So your a value is 5y, and b is a positive 1, not a negative 1. You have to memorize your formula. Remember, it's a, b, then a squared, ab, then b squared. And then you're using the acronym SOAP. SOAP meaning same math operation minus o means opposite of what you started with. So that'll be plus, and ap means always positive. Then you're just going to do your substitutions. A times b would be 5y. Be careful when you're putting into the b squared. That's 1 squared, which is 1. And here the a term is 5y, so 5y squared will give you 25y squared. Question number 13 says factor completely. If you recognize your a value is 1, b is 0, c is 36, you'll recognize that there are no two numbers that you can multiply to be positive 36 but add to be 0. Remember, with 0, these would have to be the same numbers and then opposite math operations, which means that this is called a prime factor, which means you can't factor this. We'll go down here, even though I had 2 questions. Number 14. Number 14 says to solve by factoring. If you add 15 here and you put it into your X box, you realize that you can't solve it. So if you wrote the words can't be solved by factoring, I give you full credit, 4 points. Some of you guys did the quadratic formula if you also recognize that your discriminant, or the number underneath the radical sign, was a negative, which you can't do. You could say no real solutions. I would have also accepted that as full credit. Question number 15 up here says factor completely. Here my a term is 4, b is 11, c is 6. A times c is 24, b value is 11. Two numbers that multiply to be 24 are 8 and 3, because those same two numbers add to be 11. Now a lot of you probably stopped right there. So if you stopped at the x here and you wrote x plus 8, x plus 3, if you multiply those out, those are incorrect. So I give you 2 points for this. Remember, don't stop there because a value is greater than 1. So go ahead and put that into your box. Here you just add an x, so that's 3x. 8 becomes 8x. First term, 4x squared, and your last term is 6. So 4x times x. You're trying to find your GCF here, so that would be an x. Going in this direction would be a 4x. And then multiply 2 times 4x is 8x. X times 3 is 3x, and 3 times 2 is 6. And the last question, running out of time here. Solve by the quadratic formula, so make sure it's set equal to 0. Identify your a, b, and c. Always, always, always write down the quadratic formula itself. When you're doing your substitutions, go ahead and make sure you use parentheses, so that becomes -7. Here, remember this is -4 times a times c, so -4 times 2 is a -8. -8 times -4 is a positive 32. You'll add there. Square root of 81 is 9. Here you're going to separate your answer into 2 here, and you'll simplify, and you'll get 1/2 and -4. So because the other one question up there was extra credit, the size was 22, and the whole quiz was out of 38. I hope that was helpful for you to be successful on your test on Thursday. Good luck.